The gods had created humanity to serve. But what happens when the creation begins to evolve and the creators begin to fight? In the ancient tablets of Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon, we find stories not just of human struggle, but of divine war. Not metaphorical conflict, but actual feuds between powerful flesh and blood beings who ruled the earth like rival kings. And caught in the middle was us. This is the story of a cosmic family feud, of forbidden unions and sacred bloodlines, of kingship, catastrophe, and survival. Once humanity had been created and began multiplying, the Anunnaki divided the earth into zones of control. Enlil took command of Mesopotamia and the central administration of the mission. Enki maintained control over the Abzu in Africa, continuing genetic and metallurgical work. Ninhursag oversaw healing centers and biological monitoring. Nana, Utu, and Inanna, children and grandchildren of the primary gods, were given cities and temples of their own. At first, there was order. Human kings were appointed, temples were erected, and civilization began to flourish under the guidance of the gods. But beneath this structure, rivalries festered. The Igigi, celestial beings assigned to orbital stations, had already broken ranks by taking human wives. Their children, known in biblical texts as the Nephilim, became mighty rulers and warriors. These semi-divine hybrids took control of human cities. They amassed armies. They introduced weapons and advanced strategy. Many were worshipped as gods themselves. But to Enlil, these unions were an abomination. The Nephilim upset the balance of power. They blurred the lines between divine and mortal, and worse, they operated outside his command. Soon, these hybrid rulers began warring with each other, each claiming legitimacy through their bloodline. Earth had become a battlefield. Sumerian and Akkadian texts speak of weapons of terror, instruments so powerful they could melt mountains and turn rivers to poison. These were not swords or spears. They were ancient energy weapons, unleashed in the wars between Anunnaki factions. Enki and his descendants, often aligned with wisdom and protection, found themselves at odds with Enlil's faction, which prioritized law, hierarchy, and control. According to legend, these divine conflicts culminated in localized devastations. Some scholars point to radioactive ruins in places like Mohenjo-Daro as potential echoes of these events. Whether symbolic or literal, the message is clear. The gods brought war not just to heaven, but to earth. As generations passed, humanity's numbers grew exponentially. The Nephilim kings, ruling vast territories, began exploiting human labor and resources. The earth, once a controlled project, had become a wild frontier of violence, indulgence, and rebellion. According to the ancient Atrahasis tablets, humans became too loud. Their constant prayers, cities, and activity disturbed the Anunnaki, especially Enlil. But the noise wasn't just physical, it was energetic. The human consciousness was awakening, unpredictable, untamed. Enlil, alarmed by the chaos and corruption, declared a bold and terrifying decree. Humanity must be wiped out. The solution? A cataclysm engineered by nature, but allowed by the gods. Enlil proposed a plan to cleanse the earth using a natural disaster already on the horizon, a global flood. Astronomical cycles were known to the Anunnaki. They were aware of an approaching event, possibly a pole shift, cometary debris, or orbital disturbance that would cause the melting of glaciers and the inundation of coastlines. Instead of stopping it, they would let it happen and forbid any Anunnaki from warning humanity. The plan was to abandon the colonies, retreat to orbit or safe zones, and allow the floodwaters to erase the chaos. But one god refused to comply. In defiance of the council, Enki chose to warn a loyal servant, Ziusudra, known in later texts as Noah. Through dreams, encoded instructions, or direct communication, Enki told Ziusudra to build a vessel, not a boat for leisure, but a secure container capable of surviving the deluge. In some versions, genetic materials and animal embryos were also preserved, suggesting the ark may have been more than wood and pitch. When the flood came, it was apocalyptic. Rain fell for weeks, earthquakes split the lands, tsunamis swept across the known world. Human civilization, its cities, temples, and bloodlines, was nearly annihilated. When the waters receded, the Anunnaki returned. They found a ruined world, but also something miraculous: survivors. Ziusudra, his family, and perhaps others had made it. Enlil, shocked, was initially enraged, but Enki persuaded him that the flood had purged the corruption and that the survivors could be guided into a more balanced civilization. Thus began a second epoch of human history. The gods divided Earth once more, this time with stricter boundaries. New cities were built: Babylon, Ashur, Uruk, Thebes, Heliopolis, each under the rule of different gods. And a new kind of kingship was established, not just divine or human, but hybrid. After the flood, the gods no longer ruled openly among men, but they left behind kings, humans with divine blood, trained in law, astronomy, medicine, and sacred geometry. These kings were not random leaders. They were installed descendants of Ziusudra and others who had been genetically elevated by Enki's lineage. Thus began the dynasties, the god kings of Sumer, Egypt, and later Babylon. Rituals, language, architecture, all were infused with the memory of the gods. From the double helix carvings on temple walls to the precision of pyramid alignments, nothing was accidental. Human civilization after the flood wasn't a reset. It was a controlled restart, one that served a deeper agenda: to preserve the Anunnaki legacy without exposing their continued influence. While the masses were taught religion and obedience, select individuals were initiated into deeper knowledge, what we now call the mystery schools. These initiates, often from royal or priestly lines, learned the secrets of energy, consciousness, and celestial timing. They studied the stars not for myth, but for navigation of both space and soul. Many of these schools, such as those later seen in Egypt, Greece, and Persia, claim origins from beings who came from the sky and taught the sacred sciences. It was not mythology, it was memory passed in code, guarded by symbols, rituals, and sacred architecture. The gods had withdrawn, but their blueprint remained. Eventually, the Anunnaki began to depart Earth, whether returning to Nibiru, relocating to other systems, or retreating into hidden domains. Their open presence faded. But before they left, they encoded their wisdom in stone, myth, and lineage. Some were worshipped as gods long after they vanished, others were demonized by rival priesthoods. But their influence shaped the arc of civilization, guiding empires, wars, and revolutions. Enki's legacy remained in the builders, the dreamers, the protectors of knowledge. Enlil's legacy endured in the lawgivers, the empires, the systems of control. And humanity, born from the tension between these two divine forces, was left to choose its path. Before their final withdrawal, the Anunnaki didn't just leave temples and tales behind. They left technology hidden in ritual form. Some texts speak of the Me, divine decrees, as tablets containing the secrets of civilization, metallurgy, agriculture, mathematics, even mind control. These were not metaphorical laws. They were literal codices of power, information storage embedded into relics, crystalline objects, or vibrational tools. Only the initiated kings and high priests could access them, guarded in sanctuaries like the Temple of Enki at Eridu or the Library of Nippur. What we call mythology may be the degraded memory of real encoded technology left behind in stone, sound, and sacred number. With the gods gone, their priest kings carried on their design. These leaders did not invent civilization from scratch. They implemented a divine model already perfected by the Anunnaki: centralized rule, pyramidal hierarchy, symbolic law, and celestial alignment. The Sumerians gave rise to the Akkadians to the Babylonians. Each empire inherited divine language, sacred geometry, and the cosmic codes of kingship. But over time, this power became corrupted. Without the gods to hold them accountable, some rulers claimed godhood for themselves, waging wars, building monuments to ego, and rewriting the origin stories to erase humanity's hybrid past. Still, scattered throughout history, whispers of the original knowledge survived, encoded in myths, bloodlines, and secret rites. And though the gods had vanished from view, their influence was far from over. The wars of the gods were not just ancient history. They echo in our politics, our religions, and our very DNA. We inherited their struggles, their wisdom, and their wounds. The monuments we marvel at, the myths we dismiss, and the symbols we forget all tell the same story. We were made by them, and we were left to become something more. In the next episode, we'll follow this legacy through time, tracing how bloodlines, secret societies, and ancient knowledge shaped the modern world, and how the return of the gods may not be a prophecy, but a plan.